Hi, my name is Maggie, aka Black Hoosier Gal, and I'm just here to kind of introduce the video. So I filmed this in August. It is October now. I do have some other videos that I pre-filmed that I just need to edit. I'm getting better with editing. We'll see how you judge that. But I hope that you enjoy this video, and if you don't mind below, sharing your horror stories with roommates and your experiences in Munger. Now, I haven't been there since 2019. I do confuse the dates a little bit. So November 2019, I got out of my contract. February 2020, that's when I started. There were a lot of things that happened over the so there's a lot of updates to Munger and living there. You were able to get out of your contract if you felt like it was an unhealthy space. There were a lot of issues of people bringing in guests over the which you were not supposed to do, but it's hard to enforce. I think you were supposed to wear your mask in the common spaces or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly how it was, but it really wasn't working out. So a lot of people did leave their contracts. I don't know how full they are now, but Michigan did go back into in person, so I'm sure that it is fully occupied at this point. I don't know how they're handling and the rules around. So if you are living in Munger this year, let us know below what is happening with the and living in Munger, how that changed if you were there before, how that changed your experience with Munger. Okay, so back to the video. So you're thinking about moving into Munger. Let's go through the pros and cons of this move. First, congratulations on getting into University of Michigan. Whatever graduate program you decided to go into, probably MBA, because there are a lot of MBAs who live there. I just want to run through the pros and cons of living in a space, in a shared space with 5 or 6 other roommates.
Good to be a Munger.
Hi, my name is Maggie, aka Black Hoosier Gal, and today I will be giving you the pros and cons of living in the Munger graduate residence in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, if you're a Munger resident already, go ahead and put your pros and cons below. And if you're just thinking about it, go ahead and see this video all the way through and let me know what you decide. So number 1, the biggest pro is location. Munger is located on Thompson and Madison. It is very close to Central Campus. It is close to the law library along with the law school. You are across the street from the Union, and you are essentially a block or 2 blocks away from Central Campus. So Haven Hall and all that area. It's a no-brainer. It's great to live that close without paying over $1,000. I believe Munger may have increased rent just over $1,000 depending on if you're living in a suite with 6 other people or 5 other people. You're still paying well under what other landlords would charge you and being downtown in Ann Arbor. So it may be a little under $1,100 at this point. They did consistently go up. When I first came in, I believe I was paying $925, and then it was $950 something in a 7-suite apartment, and then I think by the end of it, it was $987. So I'm pretty sure they are over $1,000 at this point, but If you were going to live anywhere else in the downtown area, you would still have a roommate, and it would still be 1,700 or 1,500 if you're living in like a luxury apartment like Munger is. So the biggest pro is that you're really close to all the restaurants there. You're only two blocks away from really major restaurants like Red Hawk, which was my favorite restaurant. Chipotle took over Five Guys' spot downtown. There are two theaters, one that plays mainstream films and then one that plays independent films. So you have your entertainment, you have your food, and you have the closeness to your job job for me because I do teach as a graduate student, but also to your classes. So that is a lot to take into consideration when thinking of moving to Munger. That was the biggest pro for me, and the biggest reason I committed to going into Munger, despite the cons I will list later. The second big pro is the updated facility. So Munger was finished around fall of 2015, and it's very modern. They have modern appliances, stainless steel appliances. When you get into your suite, you have 2 refrigerators, 2 stoves, 2 microwaves, 2 dishwashers. You do have 1 washer and dryer, so I'll get into that in the cons section. But you have brand new appliances. If there are any issues, they do quickly replace those appliances if they go out on them. So they're very responsive, unlike the landlords around Ann Arbor. They respond, they replace, and they fix. So that was a big thing for me, was to have modern appliances, but also your bedroom is also pretty modern. Now, depending on if you have a bedroom with a window, which I did, and that's the film that I'm going to show, or if you have a bedroom without a window, it's a little different. The one without the window will have more shelving on the wall as opposed to mine, but the bathrooms are identical. So the bathroom is also updated. You have the modern shower along with the modern sink and the tile that surrounds the bathroom. It's very modern. I enjoyed that part, not having to share a bathroom when you are living with 6 other people, because most people, when they are living in a situation like that, they're living in one of the houses downtown in Ann Arbor where you're sharing with, I would say 3 or 4, depending on how big the house is, and you're sharing a bathroom, probably 1 bathroom, 1 full bath, if anything, maybe 2 full baths. So you're still having to share that intimate space with someone. I enjoyed having my own bathroom. The storage in the bedroom was iffy. It was good enough for me. I don't have a lot of clothing. They did give you a lot of storage. But we'll get into that in the con section if you really want to speak about storage. So the third pro, the amenities. You have the rooftop track. You have the study rooms on the top floor. You have study rooms on the bottom floor in the basement as well. You have a ping pong table to hang out. You have the theater, which you can reserve to have movie nights or to watch TV, because there are also cable there. So you can either bring your computer to project on the theater screen, or you can use the remote to turn on the cable to tune into. I know there was a weekly thing with Game of Thrones when it was on, with The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. So there's just a lot of community that happens in a theater as well. There used to be a 3D printer. I believe the 3D printer is still there, but we used to be able to request specific filament colors for free, and they would buy it, and then you could go ahead and request it at the front desk on the top floor. I don't believe that is a option anymore. It's no longer a service. I believe now they say you have to provide your own filament paper. So that kind of sucks, but you still do have access to that 3D printer in the basement. And I'm sorry, I forgot about the bike storage. So you have an option of paying extra for bike storage. So in the winter, in the basement, there is an area to store your bike. It is pretty convenient. It works well, especially in the winter or in the summer when you want to keep your bike somewhere cool and or warm. I never really used it because I didn't bike around, but it's pretty full, so people take advantage of it a lot. So the last pro is community. So when moving to Ann Arbor, especially your first year, it is nice to be around a group of students. Now there were a lot of clubs and or meetings for specific graduate students. So we had the LGBTQIA meeting up every once in a while, and we had first gen students meeting up to discuss their issues. I can't remember the other meetings, but all of them had food. It was sponsored by Munger and the graduate employees that worked for Munger. So they would always have food at these events. So it was very welcoming. You can meet new people. This goes into the pro and con area a little bit because I did enjoy the community overall, but there were definitely, like anywhere else, problematic people that you hated seeing at events. But overall, I mean, it's free food. They did have a board game club as well, and you didn't have to stay for the board games. You could have just came down there to get pizza or whatever food they had and then left. So that's something I did enjoy, is that the graduate students who were working for Munger did understand that other graduate students just wanted to come through to get food and leave. They were not offended at all. The only time they may have been offended is if it was like a speaker situation, because that is a different social etiquette that comes with a speaker being there. But otherwise, they didn't care when you just came and you left. That was fine. Okay, so let's go into the con situation / my roommate horror story. So the first one is the sharing of common spaces with 6 or 5 other people. The first 2 years, it was great. We did have our interpersonal issues, but it never got to the point of having to go to the building manager to talk about things that were going on. We always handle it internally. I lived in a suite where the RA did live. All those years I lived there, I lived there for 2.5 years. I'll tell you why the half year was cut short. But the first 2 years, I had no real issues with people. There were minor things like hygiene. So putting things that shouldn't be in the trash, like liquid items, and so it would stink up the kitchen, or leaving dirty dishes in the sink, or not cleaning the counters after meal prepping, or food on a stove. Those were issues, they were, but it was easy to resolve because people were very responsive. It never was 100% resolved, but there was a level of respect that was given between all 7 roommates within the suite. There were issues about the washer and dryer, just having one washer and dryer, because roommates, they do close at different times. That we did have people mostly recognized not doing their laundry after midnight, because I was right across from the laundry room, and there were people who lived on either side of the laundry room, so it would have been disruptive to their sleep. So most of the time that was fine. People had their own parties, and they usually ended at a decent hour, like 11. So my time there for the first 2 years were great. Now here are what issues do come up in the third year when dealing with a whole different group of roommates. So my third year living there, there were 6 new roommates, one who had lived in there the second year, and we had issues, but I thought we were okay. I mean, she never spoke to me, but that's neither here or there. But there were issues with storage. Now, the refrigerators, because they are French doors, it does limit your space within the refrigerator side and the freezer side. I finally got a full shelf for the first time living there because everyone who had a full shelf had left. Usually had like one of the side shelves, and it was very difficult to buy like a gallon of milk and other things. It was hard to fit everything in there, so I would have a few of those instead of having shelf. Now, if I would have asked roommates in the past to use their shelf, they would have definitely let me use it. That was fine. They were great. This third year, I was in and out of the apartment because I just bought a car, and so a roommate decided to take my shelf while I was gone. She cut my shelf in half. I had one of the refrigerators replaced because it was having an issue of not closing all the way. So you had to literally push it in to make sure it was closed, and there was something wrong with the seal. So they replaced the refrigerator. When they replaced the refrigerator, she took the shelving unit, one of the shelving units, out of the broken refrigerator, put it into the new refrigerator, cutting my shelf in half. So I had to put all my items sideways. So if I had anything, any drinks, I had to actually put them sideways. I believe this was completely unfair because I had made claims to that space. She could either have asked me to use my shelf while I was gone, or at least asked me to, if it was okay to cut my shelf in half, my space in half. She did neither of those things. I had already been having issues with the roommates because they were leaving grease on the stove, which is a fire hazard, and I continued to tell them that. And I was a little insistent on having a meeting about that because they were very passive in the way that they would just ignore my messages. So we were already having conflict before I came back into the apartment. As I arrived and I saw that, I told her, you need to move your things. I was very stern because I felt it was very disrespectful on her side. And as I did that, the RA, who happened to be friends with her, they were in the same social work program. They both came to me and they confronted me about my behavior, which messages, they were never confrontational. It was just like, move your stuff, it's my space. You didn't ask me. That's not confrontational, that's telling you what it is. So as this happened, the RA sided with her friend, of course, because she's biased. And as we're having a conversation about space, the individual, and I'm going to use race because I feel like race factored in, the white roommate, who was a social worker, told me that it's a community space and she can do whatever she wants, basically. Now, she didn't say do whatever I want, but she said, I don't have to apologize to you for cutting your space in half because it is a community space. And because it's a community space, she said that she had the authority of changing things around without any permission. That's not true. If I had cut down her storage, it would be a whole different thing. But because it was me who was in and out of the apartment, it was fine. And I will say I was the only black roommate there. I wasn't the only person of color, but I was the only black roommate in the suite. I tell her I still think that's inappropriate. I believe I deserve an apology, but whatever. And I discuss other issues that are going on, and the RA and me discussing it, and when I'm confronting people, I'm actually do have anxiety attacks. So I was having an anxiety attack, and I was trying to hold back tears, not because I was scared of them. It's just I don't do confrontations unless it's absolutely necessary, and at the time, it was necessary. The RA told me that I was being aggressive, right? And to use the term aggressive with a black woman is a very racialized term, especially in the way that I speak to people. It's never with aggression. It's always with kindness and respect. What is say always? But you had to really push me to get out of my character. And at that point, I was not pushed. She told me I was aggressive, and I told her if I'm being aggressive, then why are you speaking with me? We need to go ahead and take it to the building manager. And to that she said, well, I misuse aggressive. you don't misuse aggressive. That's a very strong word. And she said, we don't have to take it to the building manager, which I believe she just didn't want to have a complaint of being an RA in the way she was behaving. So I still went to the building manager. I explained the situation, who she is a white woman, and she understood that calling a black woman aggressive is a microaggression, especially to a person who's not being aggressive, and for her to try to take it back as soon as she put it out there. She didn't really think it was appropriate the way the RA responded to the issues, but this person was leaving her job anyway, so she didn't really deal with my issue correctly. We planned a suite meeting with the building manager supposedly being present, and the general suite meeting that I had came up with was supposed to be put off until we can meet with the building manager. Building manager never told the RA this. I, at that point, stopped all communication because I would not ever want to be in a situation where someone can continue to lodge adjectives such as aggression or whatever else she wanted to lodge against me. So I stopped all communication, but they were still in the group me, and I went ahead and stayed out of the apartment for the rest of the time. I didn't want to be there. I stayed at a friend's place. And eventually, when I was out that day, we were supposed to have the suite meeting. They texted me and said, "Where are you? We're all here waiting." And I should have known this was a setup from the start. But I went. I drove back. I parked. My friend came in. She was present as a witness. And it went horribly. One, and I'm still going to continue to use race, a Korean international student told me that I was apathetic. I don't know how you get apathetic from someone complaining about the grease on the stove. She told me I didn't understand people's schedules. If you don't have time to cook, don't cook. You can't leave grease on the stove and have a fire hazard. Or you put in a group message, "I left grease on the stove. If someone can please clean it up, that'll be great." But to not address anything and you're a full-grown adult and you can't manage a schedule, that's on you. I had a busy schedule too. My first year, I had a lot of classes to go to. I had barely any time to do certain things. But even living alone, I didn't leave things that were a hazard to my neighbors. That's not something I would do. I would not leave grease on the stove or do any of these things. So anyway, she called me apathetic. She told me that I was basically harassing them because they were passive and not responding. So I sent an email, I did the group me, and then the last thing I did was a text message. I wouldn't say it was harassment. They said that if you can't reach, we had a agreement. If you can't reach through GroupMe, then you go to email. If people don't respond to email, you go to text messages. So I was just following that line of communication. They basically went around the room to tell me all that was wrong with me. And I was a person who was barely there in the first place, so I don't know how this can be all wrong with me. And there was one white student who was so aggressive with me, and she was aggressive, truly aggressive, fuming, mad. She couldn't even look at me in the eye. No one said anything to her. They didn't say, "Hey, why are you being aggressive?" They didn't say anything, and at the end of the meeting, she tells the other white student who told me community spaces, she can do whatever she wants to do. She told her, "You can share my shelf since Maggie doesn't want to do this." And I was just like, and I pointed it out, so she can be aggressive with me, take it, and no one's going to apologize for all the communication that happened. At that point, I got out of my contract. This was November of 2020, so just in time for the pandemic. And I moved back home where I could save money and not pay $987 a month. So it was I wouldn't say traumatic because that's a little dramatic, but it was, actually I will say traumatic. It is traumatic to have to go to be attacked by so many people together. And even when I complained to the office of, I forget what it's called, I think it's OIE, something with equity. And the person who took that case, she pretended like she didn't know what microaggression is. And considering microaggression was the buzzword of the decade, I doubt that she did not know. And if she did not know, then she was incompetent in her job to really address bias complaints. So that was my experience, and I know that it's pretty out there. There were horrible roommates. I just happened to have 6 of them. So that is the biggest con, is to have interpersonal issues with your roommates, for them to be very disrespectful. The other is hygiene, of course, with the roommates. There were horror stories of people putting raw fish and raw chicken on the counters and never wiping it up, and then leaving foods that will stink up the whole apartment in the sink without addressing them, or having dirty dishes stacked up for weeks at a time. One thing about Munger is that even though they want solutions, especially with interpersonal conflicts, they want to set up these meetings to provide solutions. You can't force someone to be a decent person. You can't force someone to be a clean person. That's just not going to happen. Now, getting past the roommate horror story, we go into the second con. So the second con is not being near grocery stores. So I told you about the restaurants and the Union being across the street, so you could go in there and get, I believe they have Subway, whatever they replaced it with. The Union's new, and I still haven't been back this year, but they had a Subway down there that I went to, and I believe they had some Greek fast food restaurant and Burger King, something along those lines. You have access to foods that are not great to you, and some you could probably make great, make healthy for you, but you are not close to a grocery store. So people were doing a lot of ordering through Target and using Instacart. So they had Instacart orders. There was a lot of Instacart orders that happened because going to the store took a bus ride, or you could do Zipcar, but Zipcars were a mess at certain points. You do get a reduced rate being a student, but the way students leave the Zipcars are not the cleanest, and they were often gone during the day, during the normal times you would do grocery shopping. So you would have to take a bus around 20 to 30 minutes away, depending on what store you're going to. I went to the Kroger that I like on Plymouth Road, because I didn't like the other Kroger at all. The Kroger on Plymouth Road took around 20 to 30 minutes one way, and so I would do my grocery shopping within 15 minutes, which would give the bus to turn around, because the route would end close to Kroger, so they would turn around and I would be on that same bus, and I would go ahead and make it back to Munger in like an hour and a half. So half hour there, 15 minutes to shop really quickly, get back on the bus, half hour back. The bus that you take from Munger to the Central Station converted into the bus that went to Kroger on Plymouth, and vice versa on the way back. So it was fairly easy to do that. That was my biggest complaint, was besides the roommate issue, my big complaint was not being close to grocery stores. It sucked. I had lived in Harper House on Main Street, across from Bush's, diagonally across from Bush's. So I was used to having a grocery store pretty close by in case I needed to do some kind of quick run for tomatoes or whatever produce I needed to get, or even snacks. So be mindful that living in Munger it's difficult with the grocery side. So my third complaint, or third con with living in Munger, parking. Parking is not easy to come by. I did not have a car for the first 2 years, so I didn't care. All I cared about was location, but once I had a car that third year, it was very difficult to find a parking space. So you're saving money on one end by paying a lower rent to live downtown, but then your parking situation eats into that saving. So people were paying 75 to like 150, I believe, a month to park their car close to Munger. I don't enjoy not looking at my car. I would have loved to have a space in the garage next door, but most of those are for faculty, staff, and on a weekend, if you had a pass, I think one of those passes you could park there on the weekend for free. But otherwise, during the week, there was no parking in that garage. There was street parking, and to be honest, if you stayed there long enough and you really did get a ticket, the ticket was $25. You could just park there all day for the rest of the day. Once you get that ticket, it's like there's no reason to move your car once you get that ticket. But yeah, they would come out every morning to ticket people at, I believe the meter started at 8 a.m. Yeah, it started at 8 a.m. And there were plenty of people they would get with those $25 tickets. So another con, the fire drills. The fire drills were constant at Munger, and it was a issue. It was a big issue. When I was there, it was pretty much every month we had some kind of fire alarm go off. Sometimes it'll be 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It could be midday at like 12 p.m. where you're doing something in the room. It was a lot. And there were so many people who did cause the alarm to go off. But at one point in time, Munger they do drills in the summer, I think for a whole week. They'll use the fire alarm system to do their drills. And it's just, that's one big complaint that you receive from people who are living there. And I do have videos of when I was out at night waiting for the fire alarm to turn off. God. But yeah, that was a con. Definitely a con. Okay, and the last con. The last con is the community. You do run into some pretty iffy people. There was one guy who, we're talking about was it the Carolina or Virginia? I forget what it was. The governor who was in blackface. He definitely defended this governor, saying that he was a young person, and the governor, I think, was 20. He was in med school, so he was at least 24. Imagine being in med school and using blackface, and you're going to be serving a mixed population. Anyway, he definitely defended the governor, and there were some other people who were really weird, and I say weird in a creepy way. They were creepy, they were aggressive for no reason, they were rude, but that was very few, and people usually knew who it was, and they often stayed away from them. There are some wild statements that were said, and certain community events that you had to just walk away. I know I walked away a lot. That is it for my pros and cons of living in Munger. I could list more, but those are the biggest pros and the biggest cons that I can think of that I think will help you decide to live there or not. I will say, if I had not had that experience with my roommates, nor what happened in February 2021 didn't happen, I probably would have spent the rest of the year there, and I may have thought really hard of doing a 4th year. I do believe that Munger is good in doses. So for the MBAs or master students who are only staying there for 2 years, I think it is a great apartment to be in. For PhD students, it's a temporary space. It's one that you do to save up money in order to go ahead and live out on your own, because it does get pretty tiring to deal with the same issues year to year and know that nothing will really change, because you can't change people at all. That's not something you can do. So you'll still have those interpersonal issues, the hygiene issues, noise issues, whatever you would have with having roommates. But 2-3 years, I think, is a good part. Now, I did leave out one more thing, and it's unrelated to me, but master's students and MBA students did complain that even though their graduation was in May, they still had to pay their rent up until July. So you can either come into Munger in May or July, and they used to do 9-month contracts. They don't do that anymore. For those who were masters or just wanted to be there for 9 months, they only do 12-month contracts. So when you did graduate in May, you have to pay until July. I don't know if they stopped doing that. I don't know if there's a way around it, but I will give you that warning. It was never an issue for me because I'll be at University of Michigan probably until I don't know when, however many years I have left. But it was an issue and a common complaint among MBA and master's students. So with that, I leave you. If you want to hear anything else about my experiences in Ann Arbor, go ahead and click like and subscribe. I am going to review another apartment building I lived in called Harbor House Apartments. It's a really horrible story too. I don't know what is with my luck, but I am going to be reviewing them. I have videos from an apartment flood that I experienced at Harbor House. Thank you for getting through this whole entire video.
What is he there?